Hello everybody, Jaime Fleres here. I would love to give you an introduction to your chart. And part of why I'm doing this is that I want you to be ready so that when we do this next free 5-week series on relationships and astrology, that you can play along. So my invitation to you is to go get your chart. There's two ways to do that. I will post a link. I think it's astro-chart or charts.com. I have to go find the link. I'm going to link it below. So you can either go to the link below, click there, get your chart. It's going to be almost like this, not quite the same, almost as cool as this one. Or at this point, for a limited time, if you can send me an email, Jaime Fleres, JaimeFleres @gmail.com in the next couple days. So today I'm recording this on the 13th of August, 2019. If you can send me an email, and what I need in that email is your name, your date of birth, so month, day, year. I need your time, so like 11:11 a.m. So I need the a.m. or p.m. 11:11 is when my daughter was born. And the place of birth, city, state, country. So those are the things I need in order to pull your chart, and I'd be happy to pull your chart and just send it to you. So when you get your chart, whether you go to the link or whether you ask me for my pro copy, because this is from my pro professional astrology app, this is what you'll see, or something very similar. So what I'd like to do is just, without overwhelming you, this is just like the very simple, basic vocabulary, the language of a chart. And I want to give you just enough right now, not to overwhelm you, but so that you have an orientation to your chart, so that you can find some of these aspects, some of these elements that we'll be talking about, not aspects, because aspects actually mean something different in astrology, the different elements of your chart, so that when we're talking about something in the free video series about the chart and what it means, you can actually go to yours and figure out what sign yours is in and what house yours is in, and understand how to apply it to you. Okay, so this is for application purposes. So we're going to start. I'm pretty sure you can see my cursor here. So find the cursor on the screen here. It's up at the top at 12 o'clock. And I want to orient you to the chart. So first of all, the chart is a lot like, as you'll see, it's like, oh, it's a wheel. And it's much like a medicine wheel. So actually, this is the eastern horizon. I know it kind of seems like it should be the west since it's on the left, but it's actually the eastern horizon. This is the site of the rising here, right? This is the western point. So this is basically everything that's above the horizon, and this is everything that's below the horizon of Earth. So as we see it in a chart, this is sort of the picture. Remember I say the picture. This is like a snapshot of the picture of the sky at your birth. So that's a snapshot. Anytime you look at a chart, I always, before we start learning letters here, this is my chart. I invite you just to notice what you notice first, like intuitively. But that's kind of getting into more like how to look at a chart. So let's just go into some of the very basics. So let's start at this very outer wheel. So this outer wheel has a bunch of symbols in it, right? And some of these symbols, you might know all of them now, or you might know none of them. No big deal. I'm going to tell you what each of them are. These are the signs of the zodiac. Now, they're all in this order in every chart, but they don't all have the same placement. So it depends on what your rising is and where all of these lie, right? So let's go clockwise. So this is Virgo, this green sign up at the top at 12 o'clock. This is Virgo. This is Leo. This is Cancer. This is Gemini. This is Taurus. This is Aries. This is Pisces. We have Aquarius. We have Capricorn, we have Sagittarius, we have Scorpio, and we have Libra, okay? So we also see when we go into the chart that these are replicated here. Like, oh yeah, there's that Virgo right there. There's that Libra right there. There's that Scorpio right there. So these actually, are corresponding with the house in this chart, in the way that this chart is laid out, the one right below, basically. Well, it kind of depends, but the one to the left. Okay, so we see that, this house, this 10th house, which you can see down here, we'll get to that in a minute, is my house of Virgo. So all the things that show up there are in the sign of Virgo. Okay, So we have the sign out here, and so let's just go down. We'll just go down towards the center, okay? So we have the sign. Now here we have this row, this kind of band of symbols here are the planets, the asteroids, and the particular points on a chart, okay? So let's go through those. This is our north node. This is the asteroid Vesta. This is the asteroid Ceres. This is the asteroid Chiron. This is the asteroid Pallas Athena. This is the south node of the moon. This is Neptune. This is AS, the ascendant, also called the rising. I'll call it the rising or the ascendant oftentimes. Now, one of the things that's missing on this chart is the DS or descendant, and it's over here, same degree, opposite sign, so it would be in Gemini. So my DS would be here, and that's relevant because we're going to talk about that during one of our classes. So you're going to have to imagine it and draw it in there. We have Mars, so I'm going back to here. I'm at 9 o'clock now, just at the eastern horizon. I have Mars. This is the Wheel of Fortune, which we're not going to talk about, but it's an asteroid. Actually, yeah, I'm pretty sure. I don't know that much about it, honestly. I haven't gone deep with that one yet. This is Uranus. This is Mercury. Here we have Pluto, Black Moon Lilith, the Sun, the Moon, Juno, Saturn, Jupiter. This MC means midheaven. It's usually right at or about the top of your chart. It also has a corollary on an axis, which is, these are the two things that are not in my chart. Down here we have the IC, which is the Home and Roots project in astronomical astrology, and it's again in the sign of the house, so it would be in the sign of Pisces here. My IC is in the sign of Pisces at 13 degrees, because we see this is 13. I'm about to get to that. It would be down here. IC 13 degrees in the sign of Pisces at 56 minutes. Okay, so that brings us, I got us to the top, right? No, we have one more. Midheaven, and this is Venus. Okay, so the next thing we have as we go in deeper towards the center of our circle, of our wheel here, is these numbers with a degree, right? So this is the degree at which it sits or it has landed on inside the chart, inside the wheel. And those matter, but we're not going to say why right now because I don't want to get too weedy. Okay, and then we see the sign, right? So now we can start to see, okay, so this is what I want you to be able to do. This is why this matters for me to go through these pieces. I want you to be able to find your moon, for example, and figure out what sign it's in. So my moon is in Libra, and my moon is in the 11th house. So let's go through the houses. So the first house, these are always in the same positions. These don't change. So we have the first house all the way around to the 12th house. Now, again, not to get too weedy, but just for your little brain's sake, for informational purposes, every house corresponds with a particular sign, and it also corresponds with a particular planet. I'll give you one example. The first house is the house of the self. It corresponds to Aries, which is also a very centered on self sign, not self-centered because that has negative connotations in our society, but centered on self sign. It's like the rugged individualist. And it also correlates with Mars, the planet Mars correlates with the sign Aries. So that's something to know. So the houses each lend their flavor to your chart. The signs all lend their flavor to your chart, and so do the planets. It's a little bit like having adjectives and verbs and nouns. So when you start to put them together, you start to make a sentence, right? So that's that. Thank you. I needed that metaphor. So that's what we're looking at right now, right? So we're looking at the different components that make up a composite, right? Okay, and then when we put it all together, we start to form paragraphs and chapters, and then your whole life, right? Your time track, your incarnational time track. which is a big deal. So what I want to acquaint you with for the purposes of our next 5-week session together is that the first week we're going to be talking about the moon and its sign. And then we're also going to be talking about the south node and its house, actually. So this is where it gets a little tricky, and we'll talk about this on the first call. But what I want you to get here is, so you could look at my chart and you'd be right, except there's this trick here. You could go, okay, so her south node, this is the sign of the south node, is in Aquarius, because I just learned what Aquarius looks like. And it's true. You could say, we call that like the flavoring of the archetype here, or of the sign. But actually, it's what we want is the house. Remember how I said the house is correlated with the sign, with the zodiac sign? So we actually want the sign that's associated with the third house, which is Gemini. And that gets a little confusing. So we'll go through that on the first week's call in more detail. I'm concerned because I don't want to make you like, what? It will all make sense when we get there. I promise. It's just like learning a new language. The first time you hear French, you're like, well, say what? That's beautiful. Don't know how to do that. But you just take your time and you learn bonjour and you learn, ça va, like all these things. And then all of a sudden it gets better and clearer. So, and we're going to keep this simple. This is not meant to be an astrology training where you're becoming, it's just so that you learn how to use your chart. And look, this is an ancient practice. Everybody used to know this stuff. This is an ancient art. This is an ancient art that used to be well known. It's just not so well known anymore. So we're bringing it back. Okay, so we want Gemini. So my south node is in Gemini. Let's just keep that simple. The third house is connected to Gemini. We want Gemini. So actually in shamanic astrology, we would say that my south node is in Gemini with a flavoring of Aquarius. Okay? So that'll be the first week of our 5 weeks together. The second week of our 5 weeks together, we're going to really focus on our inner goddess and god. So those show up in our archetypes of the Mars, our inner masculine, or the unconscious inner masculine in women, and the Venus sign. Venus being the feminine, our inner feminine, or the unconscious feminine that men embody, that they carry inside of themselves. So we're going to talk about that the second week. The third week, we're going to talk about this AS and this imaginary, but not present on this chart, DS, right here. This forms the relationship axis, and we're going to talk about that on the third week. On the fourth week, stay with me, y'all. On the fourth week, we're going to talk about some of these asteroids. We're going to talk about Ceres, because Ceres rules how we experience and give nurturance, and that's relevant for relationships. We're also going to look at, we're going to look at Juno, which is over here in my 11th house, because Juno is about marriage, the sacred marriage. So we're going to look at those two, maybe more asteroids on the fourth week. And then the fifth week, we're going to talk about past lives with partners. Now, that gets a little trickier for me to show you right now. But one of the things I haven't shown you, and you might be like, girl, woman, what are all these things? What are all these crazy lines in the center here? These all show aspects. So these are relationships between the points on your chart. And that gets complicated. We're not going to really get into that. Although we will just a little bit in the fifth week, just a little bit. But these are aspects. So for example, when we go, when we go to, so you see this line, I'm just going to pull out one of them. There's many on my chart. That means there's many aspects in my chart. I want to look at this line real quick, just to give you an example. So if you were to draw a line from, and actually these two are, we call this conjunct because they're both at the same degree. If you were to draw a line down to the center from here, and then over to this sign, which is right, these are the two that they're referencing, it's actually a right angle, right? So we call this a square. If you think about a square, they have all right angles. This is a square in the chart. So my Chiron is square to my North Node and Vesta, the asteroid of devotion. We're not going to get into the meaning of each one. I'm not going to get carried away. But that's a square. So what happens inside, I've got kittens to manage here. What happens on the inside of here is it's just showing relationships between different points on your chart. So that's what that is. And what we will do in the fifth video is we will talk about how to see if you're looking at your chart and another person's chart, how to see whether there is a past life connection evidenced there. Okay? So that's plenty enough from me. I hope that this was useful and clarifying. Please post any questions you have in the post, in the thread below. Any questions at all. That was a lot. Again, it's like, here's a verb, here's 10 different verbs, here's nouns, here's 20 different nouns. So I get it. This is not supposed to be like school rote memorization. This is just supposed to be take what you need to get, to pull out what you need so that you can apply what we'll be sharing, what we'll be learning together, to your own life and your beloveds. Okay. Sending love. Mwah.